The Justice card refers to the principle of doing the right thing, learning what works, what's sustainable. We're studying the path of joy, and in particular the concept of evolution. This is the second of this series of the Chariot first, and now Justice. We move on later to the Hermit. And these cards taken together create joy in a sustainable way. We must not confuse the difference between pleasure and joy. Pleasure is short-lived, very rarely worth its price. Joy is a spiritual station. It's called a maqam in Sufism, like a table beneath which you cannot fall. It's the platform of your life. And so we can actually reach a stage of life in a spiritual sense where we just don't know anything but joy. Now, obviously, that's not excitement and that kind of unsustainable, fiery feeling that pleasure gives you. And the word joy is not really used consistently well. By joy, I mean the long-term sense of doing the right thing, being the right way, having things worked out, being on top of life, never being overly stressed, being happy that you are who you are and that your circumstances are the way they are. That's what gives joy in a sustainable sense. It's not the honeymoon experience you get when you've just started a new relationship. That's what people think of as joy. And it is. It's a very joyful feeling. But it's not sustainable. That honeymoon period comes to an end. And then you see what's left underneath it all. So what we're talking about is making sure that what is underneath it all, the platform, is joy, not the surface of the ocean, but the depth of the ocean of your feelings. And this only comes through taking a very responsible, long-term approach to life. And that's what justice is. Justice is the attempt we make to bring harmony and stability in the long term. The idea that fairness is self-evident is questionable. What appears fair to one person doesn't to another. And justice as a principle of fairness is problematical. But if you actually think of justice as the path towards long-term joy, then it makes a lot more sense. And we all know, surely, that intuitively doing the right thing leads to justice. We can debate, of course, what is the right thing, and once again we have a subjective input here. Everyone will think differently about the question. And yet the concept of justice has to be a community decision, doesn't it? We have to form a kind of a social compact with the people that we're hanging out with, whether that's a nation state or a bunch of friends. There's a way of being as accepted as that which leads to harmony. And if we are not on that path towards long-term harmony, we need a course correction. We've recently come from studying the Chariot, which has a lot to do with our course in life, cutting a path through life. Here we come to justice, which is a correction, a course correction. If we're moving in the wrong direction, well, then we need to change direction. You might want to see that as rethinking your strategy. Now, if we turn that into French, rethinking is repenser. And repenser is what gave rise to the word repent, and is associated with sin. And sin is sang in French, an archery term which means you're without, you're outside of the bullseye. So sin, repent, sang, repenser, you're outside, rethink it. So we're discussing justice being a course correction that makes you rethink about how you're going. It's identical to karma. The idea that karma is a punishment is, of course, nonsense. God doesn't punish, life doesn't punish. But the opportunity for us to think again only comes when somebody stops us in our tracks, or something stops us in our tracks. And that's what karma's doing. Karma's saying, nah, that doesn't work. This is a cul-de-sac. If you try and go along this road further and further and further, eventually you're going to get blocked. You're going to have to turn around. So why not turn around now? So karma is like a cul-de-sac sign, no through road. And that's what justice is. It's a cul-de-sac sign. No, you can't do this. It doesn't work. It will not lead you to joy. Now, of course, society being what it is, they like to wag fingers, don't they, people in society? You mustn't do this, it's wrong. The 10 Commandments were never really commandments, according to the text that I read on it. It's just explanations. Somebody saying, when I've made it, when I'm actually walking the path of joy, what are the kind of things that might be evidence that I'm on the right track? Well, you probably won't go around killing people or sleeping around or stealing stuff. You know, it's just like an explanation of the evidence of success. And the justice system is that if you come up against the courts of law and policemen and authority figures bullying you or telling you must change or else, it's just a cul-de-sac sign. If you want to take it that way, you don't have to take it as an attack or a punishment. It's just information. And if you're in the right state of being, in other words, you've reached that sustainable level of joy, then you're going to interpret it in that way. This is a useful course correction. I'll change my mind now. I'll change my direction. I've been off track. I'll get back on track now. It's the same when you go into a doctor, really. The doctor's offering you similar advice. Look, that's not working. Your body's not happy with that. Don't do that anymore. And that's probably to do with what you eat. It might be, well, to do with what you think as well. Those two things, what you take into your mouth and what you take into your attention, that's what creates the injustice, the medical emergencies, or they're created by our having done the wrong thing. And it's only us. It's nobody else that can make us suffer. It's only us that brings about that for ourselves. Now, it's hard to work this out by yourself. It's the case that the ego comes up with the wrong ideas quite often, and it's quite difficult to slip out of the ego and consult the soul and just get the wisdom within one's own system of information. So it's really useful to go to a teacher, a guide, a healer, those kind of people that give feedback, and they work it out so that their experience of giving feedback is valuable and valid. They've asked the right questions. They've learned their own lessons. These are healers and teachers. They're the people that have looked into this question very deeply, and they've seen this problem that you've got before again and again, and they've seen the results as if you do this, then it works out. If you do that, it doesn't. So that's why we go to these people that give us guidance. And I could include a doctor. I certainly would include a healer and a teacher and a spiritual guide. And there's some reluctance to take guidance in today's world, and that's because we've been abused by priests over the years, the millennia. Healers a bit different, although there are some people that just refute the idea that healing can take place without drugs. Well, it most certainly can, and it's doubtful whether healing can take place only with drugs, because we have to deal with the source of the problem. Healing really means you have to deal with the symptoms and also deal with the source of the problems. Inevitably, there is a mental aspect of that. Mental, emotional, and this takes the form eventually of behavior. So what we're looking with this study of the principle of justice is how to behave differently, how to think differently, how to feel differently, by taking into account the feedback that we're getting from external sources. The feedback that we get universally offers us an opportunity to rebalance, to discover again harmony. We're trying to find what makes the soul feel to be in harmony and allow that to come into the self, the ego self, as the art of balance. You would associate the zodiac sign of Libra with this principle, where I want this, what do you want? I wonder if we can find that golden mean, that midpoint, where two sides of an opinion, two sides of an argument, two enemies, as it were, can actually discover a place where both of them are aligned in contentment. That's what we're seeking to find. So, in partnership, if you want something and your partner does not, do you really think that's going to lead to long-term sustainable joy? It won't. If your partner wants something and you continually put yourself into a position of suffering and martyrdom to give them what they want when actually you don't want it, do you think that will lead to sustainable joy? Well, it won't. What will is to discuss sensitively a mean, a midpoint, a golden place in the middle of what they want and what you want. That's where relationship reaches its exaltation. And the capacity to reach exaltation in relationship is its own joy. Eventually, getting what you want because you're powerful and a bit of a bully, it doesn't feel nice. You don't get any good feeling from that any more than you do by being a doormat. They don't lead you to any good feelings in the long term. Whereas if you actually find a way of communicating with another so that both of you are happy and you feel good, and it gives you this sense of real achievement, to reach a sense of being able to reconcile in harmony your own way of seeing things with someone else's. And that can be expanded to include more than one person. Eventually that gets expanded to your social group and your wider community, and then to an even wider sense of life itself. And that phrase, art of balance, this tells it all. What we're looking for in life is to find the art of balance. Because if you haven't got balance, then what you have is imbalance. One is orderly and beautiful, and the other is chaotic and ugly. So, how do we do this? How do we find the balance point between what I want and what someone else wants? How do we offer feedback to someone if they're out of kilter? Because there's two sides to this. It's not only that we receive feedback, we learn how to give feedback as well. That's what balance includes. You have to be able to speak up. And the answer lies in listening. Healing, generally speaking, could be summarized in that one word: good listening. If you listen to another person deeply and you hear what they say, and between the words the meaning is hidden in their tone and their choice of particular words and so on, if you actually really listen to what someone says, then you can understand them. You can stand under them emotionally. You can support them, in other words, in their emotional process. Most conversations are emotional underneath it all, and they represent an agenda, an angle that's coming from the other person, mostly unconsciously. So when you're listening to someone, even though there's this topic of conversation which apparently seems to be what we're talking about, that's not true, really. What we're actually talking about is hidden underneath that, within the way of presentation, body gestures, tone of voice, that kind of thing. There's always an agenda, and it's always secret, because the person doesn't know. And very often you, by the quality of excellent listening attention, you can pull out the deeper meaning within the conversation and understand. Emotional support is given by understanding. You can understand the other person in a way that they perhaps haven't understood themselves before, and this gives a healing movement to them. It also gives you a depth of self-reflection that you haven't had before. If you can understand someone else, then that part of them which you understand is within you, and it has not yet been understood fully within yourself. So as we understand someone else, we become more self-expressive, more self-aware. We understand who we are more. So the giving of understanding that happens through excellent listening enables us to become more of who we are. And that sets us on the right path. There's a phrase in the Islamic prayer, the Fatiha, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, show me the right way, the right path. What is the guidance I need to get me on the straight path, the path which directs me towards being who I am, which enables me to know God. And doing the right thing is that path. Being told what is the right thing is necessary for a while, because we start as children, we need guidance from parents. As we grow, we still don't know everything, and we never get to know everything, and we will always meet someone who understands a part of what we need better than us. And so, for the time being, that person can be our guide. But we won't understand what the guidance is unless we have developed our own capacity for listening. I'm reminded of an opportunity I had when I was in a village in Turkey. I met this guy and I said, I'm interested in Sufism. And he said, oh, I know there's a Sufi living in the hills. I'm a friend of his. I'll take you to see him. So he took me up into the mountains, and I met this lovely man. And I just sat at his feet and listened to him. And because my attention was in harmony, he just spoke and spoke and spoke for about an hour uninterruptedly. And I got this huge dose of Sufism coming through him because I could listen. And that was a healing event for us both. Healing is not only listening to other people, it's also taking the guidance, therefore, of teachers. That's a healing event, and requires excellent listening. It requires listening to the advice of the practitioner of healing. All of these listening skills. However, it also requires listening in a metaphorical sense to your own body. every single ailment that you get, every illness, every headache, everything that goes wrong with your body is a communication. And that communication is mostly disregarded because we just try and clear the symptoms. We want not to have a cold anymore. We want not to have a headache anymore. And we'd rather take the drug if we can and deal with the symptoms and give no attention to the cause. Well, not sustainable. In the long term, we have to understand what causes that in the first place, or it will come back. And it could be that something is incurable. That does happen. If we leave it too long, then it gets set in the physical body, and then the capacity to heal it through excellent listening is lost. So we have to do this fairly early on in the process. As soon as we notice the physical body showing signs of disharmony, then we really do need to do something differently. Probably to do with what you take into your mouth, what you take into your attention. Probably. It may be that you're living in the wrong place and you just don't notice that it's a bad place to live. You know, when I was born, I was living in an Avonmouth, and the sky was filthy yellow with sulphurous outputs from the industrial chimneys nearby. That was not okay, you know. And luckily, my mother at least saw that was not okay and got the family to move. So listening to your environment, listening to your body, listening to guides and healing advisors, this is what creates a rebalancing of self. And that's what justice is. This brings joy in the longer term through the evolution of self. Another benefit accrues when we know we're doing the right thing and the evidence is there. The physical body is good. The environment in which we live is good. Or our connections with people are harmonious. When we have that level of evidence of being on the right path of joy, doubts that we have had in life, they dissolve. We're not uncertain anymore about what to do next, and where we're going, and whether it's working. That goes. And almost everyone I know is in some doubt about this question. But that goes when you learn how to listen and you find the path of harmony. And because it goes, your will is strengthened. You don't have any doubts anymore. And so you become more determined to get on with things and to move forward in the direction which you know is the right direction. So you get more done, and you get more done for a period of time, and so it kind of pyramids and get more and more and more things done. And you get to a higher level of attainment in life. You start to play the game of life at a more intense level, a higher level, a faster level. You accelerate all the time, and you accelerate more quickly then, because you get things done because of this certainty of purpose. This is a tremendous feeling of joy. Joy very often comes from movement. And when we're moving through life by getting promoted, having new opportunities, meeting interesting new ideas and new people and that kind of thing, this is what opens up a deepening of the sense of self. And that expansion of knowledge of who we are and what we can do, and that growth, that evolutionary growth of self, that's the most sublime, joyful feeling there is. We're just becoming more and more and more of who we are uniquely in a very rich expression of life, being life. And we're moving towards oneness, because oneness is our idea of all and everything knowing what to do, because it knows everything, and we get closer to God by doing this. and that brings us tremendous joy. So, do the right thing. It's intuitively obvious that that's going to lead somewhere you want to go, isn't it, really?